Hi, friends. Cole here with a midweek message from Selkirk United Church for Wednesday, November 17th. To start today, I want to ask all of you to keep the people of British Columbia in your prayers, especially those who have been affected by the devastating flood conditions that are happening around parts of the province. They need our prayers, and they will need a lot of support in the days and weeks to come as well. Today, I also wanted to share an article with you. This one caught my eye a week or so ago. It's written by Sari Rice, and she talks about the reality that many churches are facing right now. I know that I always try to be the positive, cheerleading, glass half full guy, and that comes pretty natural to me. So in many ways, it was a challenge for me to try to see myself and our church in this article. Even through this pandemic, we have a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of people are working hard to keep things going positively for us. But I also know that not everyone sees the world or the church or reality through the same rose-colored glasses that I do. So I know that the way I see things isn't always the same way that other people see things. So I wanted to share this article with you today. It talks about the challenges that are facing us as churches and as individuals, knowing that there are many people out there who are feeling those challenges piling up on them these days. People from other places across the country and across the world, but perhaps even some of you. The article is called Church Was Already Hard by Sari Rice. She writes, being a part of the church does not feel safe right now. For many clergy and lay leaders, it may feel like the hardest work we'll ever do. Church was already hard before the pandemic because the church we've known, the church many of us graduated from seminary thinking we knew how to serve, was already disappearing. We used to think we knew what our job was, but the things we know how to do aren't working anymore, and no one yet knows what will work in the future. We're in a constant state of chaos, and no matter what we do, someone will always get upset. The pandemic and the politicization of the pandemic added yet another layer of uncertainty and fear. Congregations are more anxious and unhealthy. And when people become anxious, we rarely pause to take a deep breath and recognize our feelings. Instead, we act on them as if they were rational rather than reactive. We feel fully justified as we yell, whisper behind each other's backs, criticize, and bully. None of this behavior is new, of course. The only thing that's new is that the pandemic has made it all worse. But the result is that the church doesn't feel safe anymore. It doesn't feel like church. If this is how you feel, I'm right there with you. What's happening in our churches doesn't feel like it could possibly have been what God had in mind when God started this whole adventure. But I do believe God's church is in our midst if we can shift perspective and get a better look. Here are a few suggestions that help me make the shift. And she categorizes things into 3 different parts. Number 1, be grateful for what has been. She says, in my frustration with the current state of the church, I'm often tempted to reject everything about it, to suppose that the primary purpose of church buildings has always been to assert dominance and separate us from our neighbors, that polity has always been about mostly male power and control, that evangelism has always been colonialism thinly disguised, that membership is only about getting one's own needs met rather than following Jesus. But surely God has been at work in our history, even when our actions have been less than faithful. Despite our best efforts to make God in our own image, the Holy Spirit has touched people's lives. The hungry have been fed. The sick and grieving are still comforted. At every moment, God is with us, as individuals and as a community. Even when we've gone about God's work badly, God changes lives. No matter how wrong or how frustrated we may be, we can still be grateful for God's persistent faithfulness. Number 2, be loose with what is. Anxiety affects us, all of us, and in our anxiety, we cling to the familiar even when it is unhelpful. Anyone who has stayed in a job or a relationship longer than they should knows this truth. In this moment of COVID-flavored anxiety, we need to remember to hold the familiar lightly. Something new is being born at work, in our home lives, at church. And we will not feel the freshness of God's Spirit if we cling desperately to current practices just because they soothe us. Our true comfort comes from walking into the mystery with God, not from clinging to the familiar. Number 3, be generous with what will be. In moments when we feel that clinging is our only choice, we tend to treat our time, talents, and financial resources as a reward the church must earn by allowing us to cling rather than a faithful investment in God's still unfolding mystery. As God's church is reborn, it may not look as it did in the past, and that is something to be celebrated. The world and the church are not in a good place right now. We so rarely rise above our own selfishness. But thanks be to God that God can call us into a new place. The shape of that new place is still unclear, but there is no doubt God is at work. The day will come when we can all see this new church together. Until then, we should be generous to those congregations who bravely seek a new way. It is hard right now to have hope for the church, but we will not always be where we are now. God is creating something new and calling us to relax, take a deep breath, and keep on moving. That was from Sari Rice, who works with and writes for an organization called the Congregational Consulting Group. I don't know what all of you are feeling today and how that article might resonate with you or with people you know in other circumstances and situations. I do know that none of us ever need to face any of this alone. So please reach out if you need to talk or commiserate or pray, whatever you need. Part of being the church is finding ways, sometimes new ways, to be with one another when one of us is in need. So let's keep doing that, knowing that we have each other and never forgetting that God too is with us through it all. Thanks for listening. Peace and blessings to you all. I'll see you next time.